Chapter 1. A Tense Europe. The year is 1914. Europe is a continent on edge. For years there has been peace, but it is a fragile peace. Beneath the surface, tensions grow. Nations look at one another with suspicion. They see enemies, not friends. Germany is strong and ambitious. Its leaders dream of a powerful empire. Austria-Hungary is old and worried. Its people speak many languages, and not all of them want to stay united. Italy is uncertain. It is part of an alliance but keeps its distance, unsure of its future. On the other side, Britain stands proud, ruling over colonies across the world. France remembers its defeat in a war against Germany many years ago. It still feels the pain and humiliation. Russia is vast and cold. Its leaders want to protect smaller nations like Serbia. The stage is set. Two sides form, and both are ready to fight if needed. For now, though, there is no war. There are treaties, agreements between nations. Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy are part of one alliance. It is called the Triple Alliance. Britain, France, and Russia are part of another. It is called the Triple Entente. These alliances promise support if war breaks out. If one country is attacked, its allies will come to help. People across Europe hope for peace, but they feel the tension. Newspapers talk about conflicts in faraway places. Leaders make speeches. They talk about honor, power, and unity. Behind closed doors, they plan for war. Armies grow larger. Weapons are built. New technologies, like machine guns and battleships, are ready for battle. In the streets of Berlin, Vienna, and London, people live their lives. Farmers work in fields. Shopkeepers sell goods. Children play in parks. But there is fear, too. Some worry that change is coming. Others hope that their leaders will avoid war. Old rivalries are hard to forget. France and Germany do not trust each other. The memory of their last war still burns. Russia wants to protect its Slavic brothers in Serbia. Austria-Hungary fears losing control of its empire. The Ottoman Empire, once mighty, is now weak and shrinking. Its neighbors see an opportunity to take its land. There are smaller conflicts, too. In the Balkans, near Austria-Hungary, tensions are high. Serbia wants to grow stronger. It dreams of uniting all Slavic people. Austria-Hungary feels threatened. Each nation watches the other closely. Every move feels dangerous. The air is thick with suspicion. At night, some leaders stay awake, thinking about the future. Should they attack first? Or should they wait? They know one mistake could lead to disaster, but ambition drives them forward. They want to protect their nations or expand them. The balance is fragile. One push and everything could fall apart. People in Europe read the news and talk about politics. Some are excited by the idea of war. They think it will be quick and glorious. They imagine marching soldiers and flags waving in the wind. Others are afraid. They know that modern weapons are deadly. They understand that war will not be easy. Across Europe, artists and writers sense the danger. They create paintings and poems about the coming storm. Some speak of hope, but many predict tragedy. Their work reflects the mood of the continent. It is a time of uncertainty, a time of fear. Leaders meet in grand halls. They shake hands and smile for the cameras. But behind the smiles, there is distrust. Each leader wonders, can I trust them? Will they betray me? They sign agreements, but no one feels safe. The military grows stronger. Young men are called to train. They learn to march, to fire guns, to obey orders. Some are proud to serve their countries. Others feel nervous. They wonder if they will ever need to fight. Their families worry, but they do not speak of it. The skies seem darker. The air feels heavy. Rumors spread quickly. Did you hear what Germany's doing? Someone whispers. I heard Russia is planning something big, says another. No one knows the truth, but the fear is real. In the streets, people whisper about war. Do you think it will happen? One man asks his friend. I hope not, comes the reply. But deep down, they both know that peace is fragile. Months pass, and the alliances grow stronger. Each side prepares for the worst. But still, there is no war. People begin to wonder, will this storm ever come? Some hope it will pass. Others feel it is only a matter of time. A storm is brewing. It is not a storm of rain or wind, but one of human ambition and fear. It is a storm that will change the world forever. Europe waits. The people wait. The leaders wait. No one knows how soon the storm will strike. But they can all feel it coming. The year is 1914, and Europe is restless. The story of the Great War is about to begin. Chapter 2. A Shot in Sarajevo. The day is June 28, 1914. The city of Sarajevo is alive with excitement. People gather in the streets, waving flags. They have come to see Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. He is visiting with his wife, Sophie. For many, it is a special day. The couple rides in an open car. They smile and wave to the crowd. The sun shines brightly, and the mood seems cheerful. But not everyone is happy about the visit. In the shadows, danger waits. A group of young men is planning something terrible. These men are members of a secret group. They believe in freedom for their people. They want Serbia to grow stronger. They see Austria-Hungary as an enemy. To them, Franz Ferdinand is a symbol of oppression. They decide he must die. One of these young men is Gavrilo Princip. He is just 19 years old. His eyes burn with determination. He carries a pistol hidden in his coat. He knows the risk. If he is caught, he will surely face death. But he believes in his cause. He thinks his actions will change history. The Archduke's car moves slowly through the streets. Crowds cheer loudly. Soldiers stand guard. Everything seems normal. But then a young man steps forward. He throws a bomb at the car. It bounces off and explodes on the ground. People scream. Smoke fills the air. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are shaken but unharmed. The attacker is caught. The crowd grows restless. Soldiers try to restore order. The Archduke is angry. He wants to leave, but Sophie insists they continue. She says, "The people are waiting for us." Franz Ferdinand agrees. They change their route to avoid danger. But fate has other plans. The car moves again, heading toward the hospital. The Archduke wants to visit those hurt by the bomb. The driver takes a wrong turn. He does not know the streets well. The car stops, trying to turn around. At that moment, Gavrilo Princip is standing nearby. He cannot believe his eyes. His chance has come. Princip steps forward. His hand shakes as he raises the pistol. 2 shots ring out. The first hits Franz Ferdinand in the neck. The second strikes Sophie in the stomach. Both collapse. Blood stains their clothes. The crowd gasps in horror. People scream. Soldiers grab Princip, but it is too late. The Archduke looks at his wife. "Sophie, stay alive for the children," he whispers, but her eyes close. She does not respond. Moments later, Franz Ferdinand's head falls back. He is dead. The crowd is silent. Shock spreads through Sarajevo. News of the assassination spreads quickly. Austria-Hungary is furious. Its leaders blame Serbia. They believe the Serbian government helped the assassins. Serbia denies this, but no one listens. The anger is too strong. Austria-Hungary decides it must act. The people of Austria-Hungary are filled with sorrow. Their future king is gone. Crowds gather to mourn. Bells ring out in churches. The empire demands justice. But what kind of justice will it be? Serbia is small, but it is not alone. Russia supports Serbia. It promises to defend its Slavic brothers. Austria-Hungary knows this. It turns to its ally, Germany, for help. Germany agrees to support Austria-Hungary. The alliances are now in motion. Weeks pass, but the tension grows. Austria-Hungary sends an ultimatum to Serbia. It is a list of demands. Serbia agrees to most, but not all. This is not enough for Austria-Hungary. On July 28th, 1 month after the assassination, it declares war on Serbia. The world begins to shift. One by one, countries are pulled into the conflict. Russia mobilizes its army to defend Serbia. Germany declares war on Russia. France and Britain prepare to fight. The alliances are no longer just promises. They are actions. The Great War begins. The streets of Sarajevo are quiet now. The cheers and gunshots are gone. But the city will always remember this day. The day 2 shots changed the world. People wonder, could this have been avoided? But it is too late for questions. The wheels of war are turning. Gavrilo Princip is arrested. He is young, too young for the death penalty under Austrian law. Instead, he is sentenced to 20 years in prison. He will not live to see the end of the war. He dies in prison in 1918, sick and broken. Did he regret his actions? No one knows. Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are buried together. Their children are left without parents. The empire mourns, but the world moves on. The assassination becomes a spark that lights a fire that will burn for 4 long years. Millions will suffer. Millions will die. For now, people do not know how big this war will become. Some think it will be quick. Others fear it will last forever. But one thing is clear. The world will never be the same again. The shot in Sarajevo has started something no one can stop. A tragedy and a turning point. The story of the Great War has begun, and it will touch every corner of the earth. Chapter 3. The Great War begins. The year is 1914, and war has begun. Austria-Hungary has declared war on Serbia. It is the first step in a chain of events that will pull the world into chaos. Serbia calls for help, and Russia answers. The alliances that once promised peace now lead to conflict. The Great War has started. In Vienna, people celebrate. They wave flags and sing songs. Soldiers march through the streets, their boots echoing on the cobblestones. Many believe the war will be quick. They think their army is strong enough to win in weeks. Families say goodbye to their sons, brothers, and fathers, expecting them home by Christmas. They do not yet understand what lies ahead. In Serbia, the mood is different. The people are small in number, but their hearts are fierce. They have fought for their freedom before. Now they must defend it again. Soldiers gather their weapons, ready to face the mighty Austro-Hungarian army. Villages prepare for battle. Women and children pray for safety. Fear mixes with determination. Russia moves quickly. Its vast army begins to march. Trains carry soldiers across the countryside. They are going to help Serbia, their Slavic brothers. The Tsar, Nicholas II, gives a speech to inspire his people. "We fight for justice," he declares. The soldiers cheer, but some are afraid. They know the road ahead will be long and hard. Germany sees Russia's movement as a threat. The Kaiser, Wilhelm II, makes his decision. Germany declares war on Russia. The alliances grow stronger, pulling more nations into the fight. Germany also declares war on France. The soldiers prepare to attack quickly. Their plan is bold. Defeat France first, then turn to Russia. They believe speed is the key to victory. The war spreads west. German troops march through Belgium to reach France. Belgium is a small, neutral country. Its people are shocked. They had hoped to stay out of the war, but now they must defend their land. The Belgian army fights bravely, but they are no match for the Germans. Cities burn and refugees flee. The world watches in horror. Britain cannot stand by. When Germany invades Belgium, Britain declares war. The British people rally behind their soldiers. Young men rush to enlist, full of pride and excitement. They imagine themselves as heroes. They dream of adventure, not knowing the realities of war. The war spreads further still. Countries from around the world are drawn in. Canada, Australia, India, and other colonies of the British Empire send troops. Germany's allies, including the Ottoman Empire, prepare to join the fight. The conflict is no longer just a European war. It is a world war. In the cities, factories work day and night. Workers produce weapons, bullets, and uniforms. Governments ask everyone to help. Women take jobs that were once done by men. They work hard and prove their strength. Children collect metal for the war effort. Every person feels the war in some way. On the battlefield, the first clashes begin. The soldiers are full of energy. They march in neat lines, singing songs, but the fighting is brutal. Artillery shells explode, shaking the ground. Bullets fly through the air. Men fall, wounded or killed. The survivors keep going, their faces pale with fear. The war does not stop for day or night. Soldiers dig trenches to protect themselves. These trenches are long, deep ditches in the earth. They become homes for the soldiers. The trenches are muddy and cold. Rats run everywhere. The smell of death fills the air. But the soldiers have no choice. They must stay and fight. Letters from the front tell stories of courage and heartbreak. A young man writes to his mother, "I miss home, but I will do my duty." Another writes to his sweetheart, "Every day I dream of seeing you again." Some letters never arrive. The men who wrote them will never return. In the villages and cities, people wait for news. Newspapers print stories of battles and victories, but they do not show the full truth. The war is not quick or glorious. It is long and deadly. Families cry when they receive telegrams. Each one brings the same message: "We regret to inform you." As the weeks turn into months, the soldiers begin to realize the war is not what they expected. They are not home by Christmas. Instead, they face hunger, disease, and endless danger. Still, they fight on. They believe in their countries. They hope their sacrifice will bring peace. The leaders of the nations make speeches to encourage their people. They talk about honor, duty, and victory. But behind closed doors, they worry. The war is costing more lives and money than anyone imagined. Yet no one wants to back down. To retreat would mean shame. To fight on means more death. The decisions are heavy. The people at home do their best to stay strong. They send care packages to the soldiers. They hold parades to raise money. But as the war drags on, hope fades. Food becomes scarce. Prices rise. Some begin to question, is this war worth it? Meanwhile, new weapons are changing the way battles are fought. Machine guns fire hundreds of bullets a minute. Artillery can destroy entire villages from miles away. Poison gas is used for the first time. It burns lungs and blinds eyes. The soldiers call it the devil's weapon. These tools of war bring more destruction than anyone thought possible. Despite the horrors, acts of kindness and bravery shine through. A soldier carries his wounded friend to safety. A nurse works tirelessly to save lives. In the trenches, enemies sometimes share brief moments of peace. On Christmas Eve, soldiers from both sides sing carols together. For a moment, the war feels far away. By the end of 1914, the Great War is in full force. The alliances have done their job, but not as anyone hoped. They were meant to keep peace. Instead, they have dragged the world into conflict. Millions of soldiers are now involved. Millions of civilians are affected. The war is far from over. The people of Europe and beyond brace themselves. They do not yet know how long this war will last. They cannot imagine the pain and loss still to come. But one thing is clear. The Great War has begun, and it will change the world forever. Chapter 4. Life in the Trenches. The trenches are deep, narrow ditches cut into the earth. They stretch for miles, like scars across the land. This is where the soldiers live. This is where they fight. The trenches are their world now. At first, the soldiers thought the trenches would be temporary. They believed the war would end soon. But weeks turned into months. The trenches became permanent. They became homes, but not the kind anyone would want. Rain falls often. It fills the trenches with water. The ground turns to thick, sticky mud. Soldiers sink with every step. Their boots are heavy. Their clothes are wet and cold. There is no escape from the damp. The mud is everywhere. Rats are a constant enemy. They scurry through the trenches, bold and unafraid. They eat the soldiers' food. Sometimes they bite the men as they sleep. The rats grow fat on scraps and even feed on the dead. Soldiers hate them, but killing them seems useless. For every rat they kill, more appear. The air in the trenches smells terrible. It is a mix of mud, sweat, unwashed bodies, and decay. The scent of death lingers. It clings to the soldiers, reminding them of the friends they have lost. They try not to breathe too deeply. Food is simple and often scarce. Soldiers eat what they are given: bread, hard biscuits, and sometimes canned meat. The biscuits are so hard they joke they could stop bullets. Hot meals are rare. They dream of real food, of home-cooked dinners. But those dreams feel far away. Each day is the same. Soldiers wake up in the mud and prepare for orders. Some must stand guard, their eyes scanning the horizon. Others clean their weapons, always ready for battle. They listen for the enemy. A single sound, a shout, a gunshot can change everything. At night, the trenches grow even more dangerous. Darkness hides the enemy. Soldiers stay awake, straining to hear footsteps or whispers. Fear spreads like a cold wind. Will the enemy attack? Will they survive until morning? These thoughts never leave their minds. Sometimes soldiers are ordered to leave the trenches. They must cross no man's land, the space between them and the enemy. This land is empty, but it is deadly. Barbed wire and craters from explosions cover the ground. A soldier running across no man's land is an easy target for enemy guns. Many do not return. The enemy is close, just across no man's land. Soldiers hear them talking or singing. They wonder about the men on the other side. Do they feel the same fear? Do they miss home, too? Sometimes, during quiet moments, both sides feel connected by their shared suffering. Disease is another enemy. The wet, cold conditions cause trench foot, a painful infection of the feet. Lice crawl in the soldiers' clothes, making them itch constantly. Coughs and fevers spread through the trenches. Doctors and nurses do their best, but they cannot save everyone. Despite the hardships, there are moments of kindness. Soldiers share cigarettes and stories. They write letters to their families, pouring their hearts onto paper. They help each other through the worst days. Their friendships keep them going. They fight for each other as much as for their countries. The soldiers miss their families deeply. They think about their mothers, fathers, wives, and children. They carry small tokens of home, a photo, a letter, or a lucky charm. These items remind them why they fight. They bring comfort in a world filled with fear. On quiet days, soldiers try to pass the time. They play cards or tell jokes. Some write poems about their experiences. Others carve pieces of wood into small figures. Anything to distract them from the constant threat of death. The sound of battle is unforgettable. The boom of artillery shakes the earth. Machine guns rattle like angry wasps. Explosions flash in the distance. Soldiers cover their ears, but the noise never stops. It echoes in their minds, even in silence. The soldiers learn to live with fear. It is always there, like a shadow. They fear the next attack, the next bullet, the next explosion. But they must push the fear aside. They must keep going. They have no choice. Christmas brings a rare moment of peace. In 1914, soldiers from both sides agree to a truce. They climb out of the trenches and meet in no man's land. They share food and stories. Some even play football. For a brief time, they are no longer enemies. They are just men, far from home, dreaming of peace. But the truce does not last. The war continues. The soldiers return to their trenches. The fighting resumes. The moments of peace are gone, replaced by violence and loss. Yet, the memory of that day stays with them. It reminds them of their shared humanity. Time in the trenches feels endless. The days blur together. Soldiers count the days until their leave, a short break from the front lines. Some will see their families, others will rest in quiet towns. But leave is short, and they always return to the trenches. The letters they write tell only part of the truth. They do not want to worry their families. They write about their friends, about the songs they sing, about the hope they hold on to. They leave out the pain, the fear, and the loss. They keep those feelings inside. Each soldier carries memories that will never fade. The face of a friend who did not return. The sound of a cry for help. The sight of no man's land after a battle. These memories stay with them, even after the war ends. Life in the trenches is hard. It tests every soldier's strength. Yet, they endure. They hold on to hope. They dream of a day when the war will end. A day when they can leave the trenches behind. A day when they can go home. Chapter 5. New weapons, new fears. The war is changing. Technology is shaping the battlefield in ways no one imagined. Soldiers face new weapons that bring fear and destruction. The world is witnessing a new kind of war, modern, deadly, and terrifying. One of the most shocking weapons is poison gas. It is silent but deadly. A green-yellow cloud drifts over the trenches. Soldiers shout warnings. Gas! Gas! Panic spreads. They fumble for their gas masks, hands shaking. Those without masks cover their faces with cloth, but it is often too late. The gas burns their lungs. It blinds their eyes. Some choke, gasping for air. Others collapse, their bodies writhing in pain. Survivors carry the scars for life, damaged lungs, weak voices, and haunting memories. The soldiers fear the gas more than bullets. It is a cruel weapon, striking without warning. Above the battlefield, airplanes take to the skies. At first, they are used for watching enemy movements. Pilots fly over the trenches, noting troop positions. But soon, airplanes become weapons. They carry bombs and machine guns. Pilots fire at each other in the air. These battles, called dogfights, are fast and deadly. Soldiers on the ground look up and see danger in the sky. Bombs fall, exploding with deafening noise. The earth shakes. Men dive for cover, their hearts pounding. The sight of an airplane once brought wonder. Now it brings fear. On the ground, tanks roll forward. They are giant machines covered in metal. Bullets bounce off them. The soldiers inside are protected. The tanks crush barbed wire and push through enemy lines. Their engines roar like thunder, shaking the ground. But the tanks are not perfect. They are slow and often break down. Inside, the air is hot and filled with smoke. The soldiers inside sweat and struggle to breathe. Yet, the tanks bring new hope. They give armies a way to break the stalemate of trench warfare. Machine guns change the battlefield forever. One machine gun can fire hundreds of bullets in a minute. It mows down rows of soldiers like a scythe cutting grass. The sound is constant, loud, sharp, and relentless. Soldiers call it the devil's instrument. The fear of machine guns keeps men in their trenches. Attacking across open ground becomes almost impossible. The weapon turns battlefields into slaughterhouses. Soldiers must find new ways to fight. They dig deeper trenches. They build stronger defenses. They adapt, but the fear of the machine gun remains. Artillery is another deadly weapon. Cannons fire shells that explode on impact. The explosions are massive, creating craters in the earth. Soldiers call the shells iron rain. They destroy everything in their path: trenches, equipment, and human lives. The sound of artillery is deafening. It echoes for miles. Soldiers feel the ground shake beneath them. They pray the next shell does not fall on them. Many suffer from shell shock, a condition caused by the constant noise and fear. They cannot sleep. Their hands shake. Their minds are haunted by the sound. The war at sea also changes. Submarines prowl beneath the waves. They are silent hunters, attacking ships without warning. German U-boats sink merchant ships and warships alike. The seas, once safe, are now full of danger. Sailors fear the sight of a periscope. It means a submarine is near. Torpedoes strike ships, causing explosions and chaos. Crews abandon ship, clinging to lifeboats. The cold water takes many lives. The submarines create terror not only for sailors, but for those who rely on the ships to bring food and supplies. These new weapons bring not only fear, but also sorrow. They make the war longer and more deadly. Families hear about the horrors from letters sent home. "The tanks came today," a soldier writes. "We thought they were monsters." Another says, "The gas took my friend. He couldn't breathe." The weapons affect everyone, not just soldiers. Civilians see airplanes dropping bombs on towns and villages. They hear the sound of artillery from miles away. Farmers find their fields destroyed by shells. Children pick up pieces of shrapnel, not understanding the danger. Yet, the new technology also brings moments of bravery. Pilots risk their lives to fly through enemy fire. Soldiers push forward even as tanks roar around them. Medics run into danger to save the wounded. These acts of courage inspire hope, even in the darkest times. In the trenches, soldiers adapt to the new weapons. They learn to recognize the sound of an approaching shell. They practice putting on gas masks quickly. They dig deeper to escape machine gun fire. They find ways to survive, even when survival seems impossible. The war changes every day. Commanders try to find new strategies to use these weapons. Scientists and engineers work to create even more deadly tools. The arms race continues. Each side hopes to gain the upper hand, but the cost is always high. The soldiers talk about the weapons at night. Around small fires, they share their fears. "Did you see the tanks today?" one asks. "They look like beasts." Another says, "The gas is the worst. I'd rather face bullets." They speak quietly, knowing the enemy might hear them. Their voices are filled with exhaustion and dread. Despite the fear, there is a sense of determination. The soldiers know they must fight. They know they must endure. They dream of the day the war will end. They hold on to the hope that their sacrifice will bring peace. The new weapons change the war, but they also change the world. People see the power of technology, both its promise and its danger. They realize that war will never be the same again. The Great War is a war of machines, a war of innovation, and a war of fear. As the war continues, the weapons grow deadlier. The soldiers face new challenges every day. They learn to fight in a world of tanks, planes, and poison gas. They adapt, they endure, and they dream of a future without war. The story of the Great War is far from over. Chapter 6. The Battle of the Somme. The date is July 1st, 1916. The sun rises over the fields of northern France. The morning is quiet, but it will not stay that way. Today marks the beginning of one of the largest battles in history, the Battle of the Somme. The British and French armies are ready. Their goal is to break through the German lines. For weeks, their artillery has bombarded the enemy. The ground is torn apart by explosions. The soldiers are told the German defenses are destroyed. They believe the attack will be easy. At 7:30 a.m., the signal is given. Whistles blow, and soldiers climb out of the trenches. They move forward, walking across no man's land. Some carry rifles, others carry heavy packs. Their faces are filled with determination and fear. But the German defenses are not destroyed. The soldiers soon face machine gun fire. Bullets cut through the air, hitting the advancing men. The sound is deafening. Soldiers fall one after another. The attack that was meant to be easy becomes a massacre. Private James, a young British soldier, runs forward. His heart pounds. He sees his friends falling around him. He throws himself to the ground, trying to find cover. The mud is cold and sticky. He looks up and sees the barbed wire ahead. It is unbroken. He wonders how he will get through it alive. On the German side, the soldiers defend their positions. They fire their machine guns without stopping. The noise is endless. One soldier, Karl, reloads his weapon as fast as he can. He knows the enemy will keep coming. He feels no joy, only exhaustion. The first day of the battle is a disaster for the British Army. By nightfall, nearly 60,000 soldiers are killed, wounded, or missing. It is the worst day in British military history. Yet, the battle does not stop. It continues for months. The fighting spreads across the Somme. The land is transformed into a nightmare. The fields are filled with craters from artillery shells. Trees are shattered. Villages are reduced to rubble. The air smells of smoke, mud, and death. In the trenches, the soldiers wait for the next attack. They write letters to their families. "I am safe for now," one writes, "but the battle is terrible." Another says, "Pray for me. I do not know if I will survive." These letters carry their hopes, fears, and love. Every day, the soldiers face danger. Artillery shells explode around them. The ground shakes. Shrapnel flies through the air. Many are buried alive when their trenches collapse. Those who survive carry the scars, both on their bodies and in their minds. The medics work tirelessly. They carry the wounded from the battlefield. They stop the bleeding, bandage wounds, and try to ease the pain. The hospitals are full. The nurses do all they can, but many cannot be saved. The loss is overwhelming. Back home, families wait for news. Mothers pray for their sons. Wives hope for letters from their husbands. Children ask, "When will Daddy come home?" For some, the letters never arrive. The silence is heartbreaking. They fear the worst. The generals plan new attacks. They send more men forward, hoping to break the German lines. But the Germans are prepared. They dig deep bunkers to protect themselves. They hold their ground with fierce determination. The battle becomes a stalemate. As the weeks pass, the weather changes. Rain turns the battlefield into a sea of mud. Soldiers sink up to their knees. Their boots are heavy. Moving forward feels impossible. The mud swallows everything: equipment, supplies, and sometimes even men. The soldiers fight on, but they begin to question the war. "Is this worth it?" they ask. "Why are we here?" They see their friends die. They see no end in sight. The horror of the battle weighs heavily on their hearts. Despite the suffering, acts of bravery shine through. A soldier risks his life to carry a wounded friend to safety. Another crawls through enemy fire to deliver a message. These moments of courage inspire those around them. They remind the soldiers of their humanity. In September, the Allies introduce a new weapon, the tank. These giant machines roll across the battlefield, crushing barbed wire and terrifying the enemy. But the tanks are slow and unreliable. Many break down. The impact is small, but it shows the future of warfare. By November, the battle finally ends. The Allies have advanced only a few miles. Over 1 million men are dead, wounded, or missing. The cost is unimaginable. Families across Europe grieve for their loved ones. The world wonders if the sacrifice was worth it. Private James survives the battle, but he is forever changed. He returns home with a limp and memories he cannot forget. Karl, the German soldier, also survives. He sits in silence, thinking of the men he killed. Both wonder if the war will ever end. The Battle of the Somme is remembered as one of the bloodiest in history. It shows the horrors of modern warfare. It also shows the strength of the human spirit. The soldiers fought not just for victory, but for each other. Their courage and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Chapter 7. The Home Front. Far from the battlefields, life on the home front is difficult. The war touches everyone, not just the soldiers. Families, workers, and children face struggles each day. It is a different kind of battle, a fight to survive while supporting the war effort. In towns and cities, factories work day and night. Women fill jobs that men once did. They build weapons, make uniforms, and pack supplies. The factories are noisy and dangerous. Machines roar and accidents happen. Yet, the women work hard. They are proud to help their countries. For many, this is the first time they have worked outside their homes. At the same time, food is becoming scarce. Farms are empty because the men are at war. Ships that bring supplies are sunk by submarines. In many homes, dinner is smaller than before. Bread is rationed. Butter and sugar are rare. Families do their best to stretch what they have. Mothers say, "Eat slowly. Make it last." Children learn not to complain. Lines form outside shops early in the morning. People wait for hours to buy food. Sometimes, the shelves are empty before everyone gets their turn. Arguments break out. People are tired and hungry. They wonder, when will this end? In small villages, the war feels distant, but not forgotten. Farmers work harder than ever to grow food for their neighbors and the soldiers. They worry about their sons and brothers who left to fight. Every day, they check the mail, hoping for news. Letters from the front bring mixed emotions. A mother reads a letter from her son. He writes, "I am safe for now, but life here is hard." She holds the paper close to her heart. A wife reads, "I miss you and the children every day. Keep smiling for me." Tears fill her eyes. The letters give hope, but they also remind families of the dangers their loved ones face. Not all letters are happy. Some bring devastating news. A telegram arrives at a small house. The words are short and cold. "We regret to inform you." A father falls to his knees. A sister sobs into her hands. These messages leave holes in families that can never be filled. Children feel the war too. They see their parents worry. They hear whispers about battles and losses. Schools hold collections for the soldiers. Boys gather scraps of metal to make bullets. Girls knit socks to send to the front. They are proud to help, but they miss the laughter and peace of life before the war. Propaganda posters cover the walls of towns and cities. They show smiling soldiers and strong workers. They say, "Do your part, and victory needs you." These posters inspire some, but others feel the weight of these demands. The work is endless, and the sacrifices are great. In some homes, there is anger. People ask, "Why are we fighting? Is this war worth it?" They see their friends and neighbors struggling. They hear about the millions of lives lost. The newspapers tell stories of bravery, but the pain is impossible to ignore. For some, hope begins to fade. Yet, even in the darkest times, there is resilience. Families come together to support one another. Neighbors share what little they have. Communities hold events to raise money for soldiers. A local band plays music in the square. People sing songs to lift their spirits. These small moments of joy keep them going. Women, especially, show incredible strength. They keep households running while working long hours in factories. They care for their children, write letters to their husbands, and comfort their neighbors. They prove they are capable of so much more than society once believed. Men who cannot fight also contribute. Some work in shipyards, building the vessels that carry supplies and soldiers. Others join local defense groups, ready to protect their towns if needed. They know they play an important role, even if they are not on the front lines. The home front is a place of constant change. Technology advances quickly because of the war. Factories produce new machines and tools. Scientists work to find better medicines. These changes will shape the world even after the war ends. Newspapers bring news of the fighting. Some reports are hopeful, saying, "Victory is near." Others tell of heavy losses. Readers feel a mix of emotions. They are proud of their soldiers, but heartbroken by the cost. They wonder, how much more can we endure? The war also creates opportunities. For women, the experience of working changes their lives. Many find independence and confidence. They learn skills they never thought they could master. After the war, they will demand more rights, including the right to vote. The war begins a new chapter for women. The home front shows the strength of ordinary people. They do not wear uniforms or carry weapons, but they fight in their own way. Every meal they save, every sock they knit, and every hour they work helps the soldiers at the front. They give everything they have, even when it feels like too much. As the war drags on, the hardships grow. Families lose loved ones. Workers grow tired. Children forget the sound of laughter. But they hold on to the hope that the war will end. They dream of peace. They dream of the day their soldiers will return home. The home front is a story of struggle and sacrifice. It is a story of courage in the face of fear. It is a reminder that war does not only happen on the battlefield. It touches everyone, everywhere. And it shows the power of human spirit, even in the hardest times. Chapter 8. America enters the war. For 3 years, America watches the war from across the ocean. Europe is burning, but the United States stays neutral. President Woodrow Wilson says the country must avoid conflict. Many Americans agree. They want peace. They want to focus on their own lives. But the war keeps pulling them closer. In Europe, the fighting grows worse. Germany tries to weaken its enemies by cutting off their supplies. German submarines, called U-boats, patrol the seas. They attack ships carrying goods to Britain and France. At first, the targets are only military ships. But soon, U-boats sink merchant and passenger ships too. In 1915, a U-boat sinks the Lusitania, a British passenger ship. Nearly 1,200 people die, including 128 Americans. The news shocks the world. In the United States, people are outraged. How could they attack innocent people, they ask. Some demand action. But Wilson urges calm. He says, America must stay neutral. Germany promises to limit its submarine attacks, but the promise does not last. By 1917, U-boats are sinking American ships again. The losses are too great. The United States can no longer ignore the threat. Wilson knows the time has come to act. Then, another event changes everything. British intelligence intercepts a secret message. It is called the Zimmermann Telegram. In it, Germany asks Mexico to join the war against the United States. In return, Germany promises to help Mexico regain land it lost to America. When this news becomes public, Americans are furious. They see Germany as a direct threat. On April 2nd, 1917, President Wilson speaks to Congress. His voice is steady, but his words are powerful. The world must be made safe for democracy, he says. He asks Congress to declare war on Germany. 4 days later, the United States is officially at war. Across America, the news spreads quickly. Some people cheer, feeling proud and ready to fight. Others are afraid. They know war means sacrifice. But most agree, the time for peace has passed. The U.S. military begins to prepare. At first, the army is small. Many soldiers are young and inexperienced. Factories start making weapons, uniforms, and supplies. Ships are built to transport men and materials across the Atlantic. The country comes alive with energy and determination. The soldiers, known as doughboys, train hard. They learn to march, shoot, and follow orders. They leave their homes and families behind. Mothers hug their sons tightly, trying not to cry. Wives promise to write letters every day. Children wave goodbye, not understanding the danger. By 1918, American soldiers arrive in Europe. They land in France, where they are greeted with cheers. The French people call them the Americans, with hope in their voices. The sight of fresh troops boosts morale. The Allies believe These soldiers can help turn the tide of the war. On the battlefield, the doughboys face the same horrors as the European soldiers. They see the trenches, the mud, and the barbed wire. They hear the roar of artillery and the rattle of machine guns. They breathe in the terrible smell of gas. For many, it is their first experience of war. It is not what they imagined. But the Americans fight bravely. They bring new energy to the Allies. In key battles like Cantigny, Belleau Wood, and the Meuse-Argonne offensive, they prove their strength. Their determination inspires those around them. They help push back the German forces. Back home, life changes. Families ration food to support the war effort. People buy war bonds to help pay for the military. Women take on more jobs, working in factories, offices, and hospitals. Everyone does their part. The war touches every life. Propaganda posters appear on every wall. They show smiling soldiers and patriotic slogans. "Do your bit," one says. "Victory is near," says another. These messages encourage people, but they also remind them of the sacrifices needed. The letters from soldiers tell stories of bravery and hardship. A young man writes to his sister, "The trenches are terrible, but we fight for a good cause." Another tells his wife, "I dream of you every night. I will come home soon." These letters keep families connected, even across the ocean. President Wilson works tirelessly to unite the country. He believes America must not only fight, but also lead. He speaks about peace and a better world after the war. His ideas, known as the 14 Points, include plans for a League of Nations, a group to help prevent future wars. By the end of 1918, the Allies are winning. The German army is exhausted. Their soldiers are hungry and losing hope. The arrival of the Americans has made a difference. On November 11th, 1918, the war ends. The fighting stops. Soldiers on both sides lay down their weapons. The world begins to heal. The United States emerges from the war stronger than before. Its role in the victory is clear. American soldiers and workers have shown their courage and strength. The country has changed. It is no longer isolated. It is now a leader on the world stage. The war leaves deep scars, but it also brings lessons. Americans remember the cost of freedom. They remember the soldiers who never came home. They remember the families who gave everything. And they vow to honor their sacrifices. America's entry into the war marks a turning point. It shows the power of unity and determination. It proves that even from across the ocean, one nation can make a difference. The doughboys, the workers, and the leaders all played a part. Together, they helped bring an end to the Great War. Chapter 9. The Last Year of War. It is 1918. The world is tired of war. The fighting has lasted for years. Millions of soldiers are dead. Millions more are wounded. Families grieve. Cities and villages lie in ruins. But the war is not over. Germany believes victory is still possible. Its leaders plan one final attack. They call it the Spring Offensive. The goal is to break through the Allied lines before American forces grow stronger. Germany moves troops from the Eastern Front, where the war with Russia has ended. They focus all their strength on the West. In March, the offensive begins. German artillery fires day and night. The ground shakes as shells explode. Soldiers charge across no man's land. They push the Allies back. For a moment, it seems like Germany might win. The Allies are shocked, but not defeated. They regroup and fight harder. American soldiers are arriving in greater numbers. They bring fresh energy and hope. The tide begins to turn. As the months pass, the German army weakens. Their supplies are low. Soldiers are hungry and exhausted. Many are young boys or older men called to fight because there is no one else. They wonder how much longer they can keep going. In the trenches, the mood is grim. Soldiers know the end is near, but they do not know who will win. Each day feels like the last. They write letters home, trying to stay hopeful. "Pray for me," one soldier writes to his mother. "I think of you always." The Allies launch their own offensive in the summer. It is called the 100 Days Offensive. They use tanks, airplanes, and artillery to break through the German lines. The fighting is fierce. Villages change hands again and again. The soldiers face constant danger. In the skies, pilots battle for control. Dogfights fill the air with the sound of machine guns. Bombs fall, destroying supply lines and railroads. On the ground, tanks crush barbed wire and push forward. The Allies gain ground, slowly but surely. Back in Germany, life is hard. Food is scarce. People wait in long lines for bread. Factories cannot keep up with the demands of war. Families are tired of sacrifice. Protests begin in the streets. Some shout, "End the war." Others cry, "Bring our sons home." The German government struggles to maintain order. The Kaiser, Wilhelm II, faces growing opposition. Even some soldiers refuse to fight. They see no point in continuing a war they cannot win. The spirit of the nation is breaking. In the Allied countries, the mood is different. The arrival of American soldiers gives people hope. Newspapers report victories on the front lines. Families believe the end is finally near, but they also know the cost. Every victory means more lives lost. On the battlefield, the weather changes. Rain turns the ground into mud. Soldiers struggle to move through the trenches. Their boots are heavy. Their bodies ache. But they push forward, knowing each step brings them closer to peace. In October, Germany's allies begin to fall. Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, and Austria-Hungary all surrender. Germany stands alone. Its leaders realize the war is lost. They send a message to the Allies asking for an armistice, a ceasefire. The negotiations are tense. The Allies want Germany to accept full responsibility for the war. They demand harsh terms. Germany has no choice but to agree. On November 11, 1918, the armistice is signed. The fighting stops at 11 a.m. In the trenches, soldiers hear the news. Some cheer, some cry, others sit in silence, too tired to feel anything. The war is over, but the memories will stay with them forever. Back home, church bells ring. People gather in the streets to celebrate. Flags wave. Strangers hug each other. Mothers and fathers cry tears of relief. But for those who have lost loved ones, the joy is mixed with sorrow. The world begins to heal, but it is a slow process. Cities must be rebuilt. Families must find a way to move forward. The soldiers return home, but they are not the same. Many carry scars, both visible and hidden. They dream of peace, but struggle with the memories of war. The last year of the war is a story of hope and despair. It shows the strength of the human spirit, even in the darkest times. It reminds us of the cost of war and the value of peace. The world will never forget the sacrifices made in 1918. Chapter 10. Armistice Day, November 11th, 1918. The world holds its breath. After 4 long years, the war is ending. At 11 a.m., the guns fall silent. The noise of battle is gone. Soldiers lower their weapons. For the first time in years, there is peace. In the trenches, the soldiers do not know how to feel. Some cry, others laugh. Many simply sit in silence, too tired to react. They look at the muddy ground, the broken landscape, and the faces of their comrades. The war is over, but the memories remain. Private Thomas stands at the edge of his trench. He looks out at no man's land. The barbed wire, the craters, the bodies. It is a scene of destruction. He cannot believe it is over. He whispers, "We made it." But his heart is heavy. He remembers the friends who are not here to see this day. On the other side, German soldiers emerge from their trenches. They are no longer enemies. They wave white flags. They drop their weapons. Some try to speak to the Allied soldiers, but the words do not come. There is relief, but also shame. The war has taken everything from them. News of the armistice spreads quickly. In towns and cities, church bells ring. People run into the streets, shouting and cheering. Flags wave from windows. Strangers hug one another. The war that seemed endless has finally stopped. In Paris, crowds gather at the Eiffel Tower. They sing and dance, celebrating the victory. In London, Big Ben chimes as people fill the streets. In New York, parades form. Soldiers returning home are greeted with cheers. It is a day of joy, but also a day of reflection. For many families, the news brings tears of relief. Mothers pray, "Thank you for bringing my son home." Fathers shake hands with their sons, proud of their courage. Children run to hug their brothers, but not every family celebrates. Some sit in silence, looking at empty chairs. The war is over, but their loved ones will never return. The leaders of the Allies meet to decide the future. They want to make sure a war like this never happens again. President Woodrow Wilson speaks of peace and rebuilding. "We must create a better world," he says. His plan for a League of Nations inspires hope, but it will not be easy. In Germany, the mood is very different. The people are hungry and tired. The country is broken. Factories are silent. Families wait in long lines for food. Many feel angry and betrayed. They wonder, why did we lose? What will happen to us now? The soldiers who survive return home, but they are not the same. They carry scars, both on their bodies and in their minds. Some have lost limbs. Others wake up screaming from nightmares. They try to forget the war, but it is impossible. It has changed them forever. Cities across Europe are in ruins. Villages have disappeared. Farmland is destroyed. Families work hard to rebuild their lives. The task seems endless. Yet they have no choice. They must start again. The cost of the war is unimaginable. Over 10 million soldiers are dead. Millions of civilians have also died. Entire generations are lost. The survivors ask, was it worth it? What did we gain? The answers are not easy to find. The war has changed the world in many ways. New countries are born as old empires collapse. The map of Europe is redrawn. Some celebrate these changes, but others feel resentment. Tensions remain. The peace is fragile. For women, the war has brought new opportunities. They worked in factories, drove ambulances, and served as nurses. They proved their strength and independence. Many now demand equal rights, including the right to vote. Their voices are louder than ever. The Armistice is a time to remember. People build memorials to honor the dead. In small towns and big cities, statues are raised. Names are carved into stone. Each name is a story, a life cut short by war. Families visit these memorials to grieve and to remember. Veterans gather to share their stories. They talk about the trenches, the battles, and the friends they lost. They laugh at small moments of joy, like a warm meal or a joke shared in the mud. But their laughter is bittersweet. They know the cost of war too well. Children grow up hearing these stories. They learn about bravery and sacrifice. They are told, this must never happen again. The world hopes the next generation will build a future without war. November 11th becomes a day of remembrance. Each year, people stop to honor those who served and those who died. In silence, they reflect on the cost of war. They hope for peace, but they know peace must be protected. For the survivors, the end of the war is both a relief and a challenge. They must rebuild their lives, their homes, and their countries. They carry the weight of the past, but they also carry hope for the future. The world after the war is not the same. It is a world shaped by sacrifice, courage, and loss. It is a world that must learn from its mistakes. The guns have stopped, but the lessons of the Great War will never be forgotten. Chapter 11. The Treaty of Versailles. The war is over, but the world is still broken. Millions of lives have been lost. Cities and villages lie in ruins. Nations must decide how to rebuild. In January 1919, leaders from around the world gather in Paris. They meet to create a peace treaty that will shape the future. The meeting is called the Paris Peace Conference. It takes place in the grand halls of the Palace of Versailles. The most powerful leaders are there. President Woodrow Wilson of the United States wants peace. He brings his plan, the 14 points. He speaks of fairness and a League of Nations to prevent future wars. But other leaders want more. Georges Clemenceau of France demands justice for his country. France has suffered greatly. Towns are destroyed. Millions of soldiers and civilians are dead. Clemenceau says Germany must pay for what it has done. He is firm and determined. David Lloyd George of Britain stands between them. He wants to protect his country's empire and trade. He also wants Germany punished, but not so much that it cannot recover. Balancing these demands is not easy. Germany is not invited to the discussions. Neither are its allies. The decisions will be made without their voices. Germany waits, nervous and unsure. Its people fear what the treaty will bring. The conference lasts for months. The leaders argue over every detail. Borders must be redrawn. Lands taken during the war must be returned. New countries are created like Poland and Czechoslovakia. Old empires like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire are gone. The map of Europe is changing. Finally, on June 28, 1919, the Treaty of Versailles is signed. The date is symbolic. It is exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the event that started the war. Leaders hope this treaty will end the story of the Great War. The treaty is harsh on Germany. It forces Germany to accept full blame for the war. This is called the War Guilt Clause. It demands huge payments, called reparations. Germany must pay for the damage caused by the war. The amount is staggering. It leaves the country in debt for decades. Germany also loses land. Its colonies are taken away. Parts of its territory are given to other countries. The army is reduced to 100,000 men. It is not allowed to have tanks, airplanes, or submarines. The goal is to make sure Germany cannot start another war. When the terms are announced, the German people are shocked. They feel humiliated. Many believe the treaty is unfair. They call it a diktat, meaning it was forced upon them. Anger spreads across the country. Protests break out. People blame their leaders for signing it. In France, Clemenceau is satisfied. He believes the treaty will protect his country. He says, "Germany is weak now. It cannot hurt us again." But not everyone agrees. Some warn that the treaty is too harsh. They fear it will create more anger than peace. In the United States, Wilson faces challenges. He works hard to gain support for the League of Nations. He believes it is the key to lasting peace. But many in Congress disagree. They fear the League will drag America into future wars. In the end, the U.S. does not join. Wilson is heartbroken. For the people of Europe, the treaty brings mixed emotions. some are hopeful. They believe the war is truly over. They look forward to rebuilding their lives. Others are angry. They feel the treaty has created more problems than it has solved. The treaty's impact spreads beyond Europe. In colonies across Africa and Asia, people hear about the changes. Some hoped the end of the war would bring freedom. Instead, they see their lands given to new rulers. They feel ignored and betrayed. The Treaty of Versailles is a document of both hope and fear. It ends one war, but it does not bring peace. The world has changed too much. Old wounds run deep. New tensions begin to grow. In Germany, the anger from the treaty does not fade. The humiliation fuels resentment. It becomes a rallying cry for extremists. Some promise to rebuild Germany's strength. They say, "We will not stay weak forever." Their words plant the seeds for future conflict. The Treaty of Versailles is a lesson in the complexities of peace. It shows that ending a war is not enough. True peace requires understanding, fairness, and trust. The treaty may have ended the Great War, but it also set the stage for another. The leaders leave Paris with hopes and doubts. They have done their best, but they know the future is uncertain. The treaty marks the end of one chapter in history and the beginning of another. Chapter 12. Lessons from the War. The Great War has ended. The world is quiet now, but the scars of the war remain. Towns and cities are destroyed. Families mourn their loved ones. Soldiers return home, carrying memories of battle. The cost of the war is clear to everyone. People reflect on what the war has taught them. They remember the bravery of the soldiers. Men who fought in the trenches, flew airplanes, or sailed on ships showed great courage. They faced fear and danger every day. Many gave their lives for their countries. Their sacrifice is honored. At the same time, people remember the pain and loss. Millions of lives were cut short. Families were torn apart. Children grew up without fathers. Communities lost entire generations. The world understands that war brings not only victory, but also deep sorrow. The war also showed the power of technology. New weapons like tanks, airplanes, and poison gas changed the way battles were fought. These tools brought destruction on a massive scale. They made war more deadly than ever before. People realized that these inventions, meant to bring victory, also brought great suffering. The lessons of the war go beyond the battlefield. During the war, women took on new roles. They worked in factories, drove ambulances, and managed homes while the men were away. They proved their strength and ability. Now, many women demand more rights. They want a voice in their governments. They want the right to vote. The war also changed the map of the world. Old empires, like Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, collapsed. New nations were born. People hoped these changes would bring peace. But not everyone was happy. Some countries felt the treaties were unfair. New borders created new tensions. In Germany, the Treaty of Versailles left people angry and humiliated. They believed the blame placed on them was too harsh. They struggled with the heavy reparations. Their economy suffered, and their people grew desperate. This anger did not disappear. It stayed, waiting for someone to use it. Around the world, people hoped the war would be the last. They called it the war to end all wars. Many dreamed of peace. President Wilson's idea for a League of Nations gave hope. The League was meant to solve problems between countries peacefully, but not all nations joined. The United States, for example, chose to stay out. Without full support, the League was weak. Veterans returned home, but life was not the same. Many carried physical wounds. Others carried invisible scars. They remembered the horrors of the trenches, the loss of friends, and the constant fear. Some struggled to adjust to normal life. They could not forget what they had seen. Families also struggled. Parents mourned the children they lost. Wives waited for husbands who never came back. Children asked questions no one could answer. The war had ended, but its effects continued in every home. Economies were damaged. Countries had spent huge amounts of money on the war. Now they faced debt and poverty. Rebuilding was slow. Factories and farms had to recover. Workers needed jobs. The pain of war did not end with the signing of the treaty. Despite these challenges, people tried to move forward. They built memorials to honor the fallen. In cities and villages, statues and plaques were placed in squares and parks. Names of the dead were carved into stone. These memorials helped people remember the sacrifices made during the war. Children learned about the war in schools. They heard stories of bravery and loss. Teachers told them about the causes of the war, hoping they would understand the mistakes made. The goal was clear: to teach the next generation how to avoid another war. Artists and writers shared their own views of the war. Some wrote poems about the beauty of life and the sadness of loss. Others painted pictures of the trenches and the destruction. These works helped people understand the war's impact in a personal way. The Great War left behind many questions. Could future wars be avoided? Would nations learn to solve their problems peacefully? People hoped the answers would be yes. But deep down, some were unsure. They saw the anger in Germany. They saw the weaknesses in the peace agreements. They worried that the world had not truly learned. The lessons of the war are still discussed today. It showed the dangers of alliances, the cost of unchecked ambition, and the power of technology. It taught the world that war is easy to start, but hard to end. It also reminded people of the value of peace. The soldiers of the Great War are remembered with respect. They fought bravely, often in terrible conditions. Their courage and sacrifice are honored each year on November 11th, Armistice Day. The world pauses to remember those who gave their lives. The Great War was a tragedy, but it also brought changes. Women gained more rights. Nations began to talk about peace and cooperation. Technology advanced, though it brought both benefits and risks. The world was not the same as it had been in 1914. The question remains, will the world truly learn from the Great War? The hope is that its lessons will guide future generations. People dream of a world without war, where problems are solved through understanding and unity. But dreams must be built with action. The Great War has ended, but its story is not forgotten. It lives on in books, memories, and monuments. It teaches us about courage, sacrifice, and the need for peace. The world dreams of a better future, shaped by the lessons of the past. But will we listen? Only time will tell.